Every kid wants to have a lightsaber, but the blaster pistols we see in the Star Wars are a lot more attainable, at least in terms of their looks. If you watch the intro to Jerry Barnhart's Burner series, which I highly recommend if you're into practical shooting, you'll see the tracer rounds out of an open pistol look a lot like blaster bolts, and if you're at all familiar with the open division, those pistols can quickly start to look a lot like something out of Star Wars or some other sci-fi movie. And of course, as Han always says, pokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side. Now, what I wanted to do with this video is compare Star Wars pistols with their real-life counterparts and show what a blaster I designed for the films might look like. First up, we have Han's DL-44. This has been analyzed for decades, and most people know it's based on the Mauser broom handle pistol with this flash hider and a side-mounted scope. It's actually a rare model of the Mauser that featured a bull barrel, which is why you can see that the barrel appears more thick than normal. If you want more specific info on this, I suggest checking threads on the replica prop forum, where they've even found pictures of the same model of Mauser in use in other films before it's turned into Han's gun. What was interesting to me as a kid was comparing this to my dad's USPSA open gun. He had a large red dot and a compensator, so it didn't look too dissimilar from Han's blaster. This is one of the reasons I developed an early interest in competition shooting. The blaster was just a lot more attainable than a lightsaber at the time. Now the S5 blaster from the prequels. I had actually forgotten about this until I rewatched The Phantom Menace recently. Since the lightsabers and most of the blasters in the prequel trilogy were custom made and not built with found parts like the original trilogy, this is a bit out of place as far as the film's props go. I've put a Steyr Olympic air pistol here for comparison. This is the model I used when I competed in Olympic air pistol matches, not necessarily the one used for the prop, but it should be fairly similar to the one used. I don't know what was going through the prop makers' heads when he designed this one, but it's cool anyway. Not very practical though. If you're like me, when you watched Rogue One for the first time, you were probably thrilled to see this new A180 blaster show up on screen. This Luger-based blaster fits right in along with the DL-44 in the Empire era of the Star Wars universe. It's interesting they only chose to add this barrel sleeve and not some sort of optic to the pistol. It looks like what I imagine an integrally suppressed Luger P08 might look like, or some heavy-barreled competition version along the lines of a Volquartz and 2245. Also, if you didn't know, this can be seen in Chapter 6 of The Mandalorian, along with some other blasters we'll talk about later. Now, everyone's been watching The Mandalorian and making memes about Baby Yoda, so here's Mando's blaster pistol. If you haven't seen the Forgotten Weapons video on this, I suggest you watch it. He shows the Bergman pistol in detail and talks about the modifications made for the show in more depth than I've seen elsewhere. I won't pretend to have that level of information, but I wanted to mention it since so many people love The Mandalorian. Continuing on with The Mandalorian, we have Mayfield's blaster. Like everybody else, I was thrilled to see Bill Burr in an episode of The Mandalorian. I was even more surprised to see that the blasters he used were based on the Ruger Mark II. There appears to be very little modification done to them other than the flash hider and some ornamental modifications around the sight area, including what looks like some sort of laser mounted there. There aren't enough photos online yet to know for certain, but if we see this character in the future or get some sort of visual dictionary for The Mandalorian, we might have more information. If we do get those close-up pictures, I might try to create a mod kit to turn your Ruger into Mayfield's blaster. Now, let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in that. Now, in the sequel trilogy, we have the GLIE or GLIE 44. This was actually news to me because I hadn't paid close attention to Finn's weapon in the more recent films, but as you can see, the frame appears to be a SIG P229 or P226. There are more heavy modifications done here than we've seen before. If I had to guess, I'd say that the entire top end is new and fits on what is probably an airsoft SIG frame. That being said, something like this doesn't look all that out of place in comparison to a modern high-point pistol, for example. Now, Cassian Andor's pistol in Rogue One is probably the most recognizable of these to the modern Star Wars fan who's seen AR-15s around the news and elsewhere. This was kind of surprising because I wouldn't expect to see so few modifications to a highly recognizable modern gun in the Star Wars universe. There's a YouTube video of a 300 Blackout AR pistol that has a similar design to this but with a skinny barrel. I think he may have even said it looks like Han's blaster. I'm pretty sure it's single shot at a time though. Something like this is possible for a future project, just for fun or if people are interested. Now we've come to future predictions, and I wanted to bring up the 1911. As far as I can see, no pistol in the Star Wars canon nor in the Legends material is based on the 1911 design. Now bear in mind this is based on having personally consumed a lot of Star Wars content and a quick scan of Wikipedia to see if anything I hadn't seen before jumped out. What we see on the left here is one of my personal pistols, which started life as a Colt Series 80 in 9mm and was modified for IPSC and steel challenge shooting with an optic and a compensator. I chose this one over one of my 2011s or a more modern looking single stack because the grips, the slide serrations, everything else make it look a lot more like a standard government model that's been modified than one of the more modern ones that has slanted slide serrations, G10 grips, and other things. If a 1911 were to enter the Star Wars universe, I think it would look something along these lines. It might be slightly more battered and matted with dirt, but along these same lines. What's also true is that trends in current pistols seem to be making these sorts of modifications mainstream. Short compensators and slide-mounted optics are pretty normal, even in concealed carry guns, so I can imagine in a society like the Star Wars universe that doesn't make open carry taboo, we might see pistols like these race guns in leg holsters like the one Han wears. Thanks for watching. I wanted to do this hopefully as a way of growing interest in the company and because I'm a big Star Wars fan myself. If you want, feel free to subscribe for future content like this, check out our online stores for both merchandise and firearms accessories, and share things. I have a lot of ideas that I'd like to bring to life, but that can't be done without customer support for those projects.